In a recent interview, Mohnish Pabrai gave a couple names of investors that he thinks are up-and-comers that should be watched very closely. And one of these investors is named Rob Vinall, and he manages a fund based in Switzerland called RV Capital. While he invests in a lot of US companies as well, he is a global investor with investments anywhere from China to Germany. Rob Vinall reminds me a lot of investors like Pat Dorsey, Terry Smith, and even Warren Buffett, where more recently they're looking at these long-term compounder type of companies, companies that don't traditionally look like value investments, but depending on your view of the company, can definitely seem underpriced. Based on traditional metrics like price to book or price to earnings, a lot of the companies in his portfolio are not going to look very cheap. But if we take a look more at the aspects of moats that these companies have or network effects, we're going to see that there is a lot of potential value in this portfolio. I just noticed that the US portion of Vinall's portfolio was added to Dataroma via the 13F filing that has to give with the SEC. Now this information is for the third quarter of the fiscal year, so we should be expecting his Q4 in the coming weeks. However, I do think it's valuable to just look at the portfolio to get an idea of what's going on in there, what kind of positions does he hold, and things of that nature. I think Vinall is one of these guys we're going to want to clone for a long time. So having an understanding and building a story in our heads and a history about what's in his portfolio, how he has been managing it in the past, is always useful. So keep in mind this is Q3, not Q4, and I'll have an updated video for the Q4 changes when they come. Okay, let's start off just looking briefly at his website. I want to give a quick introduction to RV Capital. One of the great things about him, this investor, is that he is very open, very forthcoming. You can sign up to receive his letters, which he comes in with a bunch of great investment ideas. More recently, he's had some good write-ups on Alibaba that I really enjoyed, that I probably will cover in another video. He's also an investor in Wix.com, where he has a good write-up. But yeah, he's very forthcoming with his investment process and his thought process. So if you come over here and you can sign up, you can check out his letters. He's done some public appearances if you want to learn more about him. It's a great place. Okay. Anyway, let's hop over to Dataroma, where we can see his new holdings. Well, not new holdings, but his reported holdings for his 13F. As we can see, the overall portfolio value for these positions, the US reported positions, is just under $350 million. So he's not running a massive fund, and I think while this isn't all of his positions, I think this is about half of his positions. It's not a massive portfolio. I think I've heard Vinall talk in a previous interview that he's actually focusing on keeping his fund on the smaller side because he is prioritizing returns over gathering assets for himself, which is really admirable, and it echoes the sentiments of the greats like Buffett, Munger, Mohnish Pabrai, Guy Spear, people like that. But right away we can see that one of my favorite things about Vinall is, of course, his extreme concentration. So he has 4 positions in the United States: Credit Acceptance Corp, Salesforce, Facebook or Meta Platforms, and Wix.com. I'll admit I don't know too much about Credit Acceptance Corp, but clearly Vinall does, so I think there is something to look into here with this company being quite a large position in his portfolio. Salesforce is a little bit more of a household name, and in this most recent quarter, he added about 36% to this holding. Seeing how the market is acting today, he probably wishes that he had waited to load up these additional shares, but we might see next quarter that he's actually adding even more. If he liked it at the previous prices, then I'm sure he's liking it today. So I'm assuming that Vinall did not buy going up towards the peak, this additional 35%. So we can give him the benefit of the doubt, or what I'd rather do is take a look at the potential highest price that he might have purchased. So The highest price he could have purchased would be 285, and the lowest would be about in the 240s, low 240s. So regardless, the company is sitting at a share price of just over $212 per share compared to a price that Vinall was adding a third to his position. So that's something to keep in mind, that if this is a company that potentially interests you and Vinall's style interests you, this might be something to look at. And his entry into Salesforce looks like it came in the first quarter of 2020 where he bought it. So if he was buying in the first quarter of 2020, let's take a look. He probably bought, let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he bought at 210 per share. So if he initiated his full position there, then we're looking at prices right now that seem to be right about where he could have entered the position at its lowest point. Otherwise, both of these other positions make up pretty large portions of his portfolio. Meta Platforms, he didn't do any activity with it, and the same with Wix.com. They're all sized at about 20% of the US portion of the holdings. Also, I want to go over the history of sort of the activity of the portfolio as far back as we can go. In this most recent quarter, it looks like he sold 100% of his Slack holdings, but in reality, Slack was acquired by Salesforce. So I don't know if Vinall's part of his purchase decision was based on the fact that Slack was ripe for acquisition. But he already held the acquirer. Now, the previous few quarters, he added here and there to positions, but doesn't look like it was anything too crazy. The biggest being Wix.com, he added 10.5%. Wix again, he added in the first quarter, and again, that's when he purchased his Salesforce position. He did reduce a little bit in Facebook, and then bought back again the next quarter, just a little bit. Nothing too monumental here. He did sell out of this company called Trupanion. I don't know anything about that business or that company, but the history of this does not capture when he actually bought that company, so it's possible that it became fully priced. Okay, so he's owned it since at least the first quarter of 2019. So let's give him, an average purchase price of around $30 per share, maybe. And then he finally sold out all of it in the first quarter of 2021. So it's possible he went from a share price of 30 and sold it out at about $120 per share. Stock price going up 4 times, not too shabby. And those are the kinds of investments I like to see with investors that are very willing to share what investments they're making and what they're learning about. So I love him to see that. And also, I love the fact that he held that for multiple years, at least from what we can tell from the SEC filings. It's possible he's held that a lot longer. I don't know much of the history of Trupanion, but so just based on the perusal of this, we're seeing a bunch of what people might call tech companies. Of course, he's held Google in the past. He held a company, Carvana. He no longer has that. He sold out of that pretty quickly. But Wix.com, we're seeing these tech companies that are not traditional value investments. And if we're looking to sort of look at the new economy and learn how to value businesses in this new economy where we might not necessarily be seeing hard earnings, then Vinall, I think, has a lot to teach us. I mean, you would never catch Warren Buffett dead investing in Carvana or Wix.com. First of all, those are probably completely out of his circle of competence, but the optic valuations for those companies is ridiculous. Now, we can get into the other positions in his portfolio that aren't reported to the SEC. We can go over to Ticker to check out the investments, but it's all the same stuff. No mention of any foreign, or rather outside of the US listed holdings. So one of the great things is if you sign up to Vinall's website, which of course is built on Wix.com, you can get access to all of his shareholder letters that he writes, but he also has this fact sheet that you can download, which gives a bunch of information about his fund's performance and more in-depth information about his holdings. So one of the things that I love right off the bat is he's got this business owner mentality where his investment philosophy is written straight at the front of the fact sheet. The name business owner reflects the philosophy of investing like an owner in businesses run by an engaged and rational owner. with the capital of investors who think like an owner. This is right out of the playbook of Warren Buffett. And based on what I've seen from Vinall so far, he seems to really believe that. He's not only investing in companies who operate this way, but he's operating his own fund in this way as well. He's super transparent. Seems to be a great capital allocator so far. Let me take a look at the cumulative and annualized returns. Quite impressive compared to his benchmark, and I think he's even got a chart down here. Yeah, he's kind of killing his benchmark, which is the DAX. Anyway, as I was saying, the SEC reported companies are only about half of his portfolio. Here we can see the top 10 holdings for the company. I don't know if he has many more companies than 10 in his portfolio. Some of the companies listed here, I'm not entirely sure if this is completely up to date, because, for instance, Carvana is here, but it wasn't reported to the SEC as a company in his portfolio, so maybe that was just an oversight or something. Or maybe they've added it back in Q4, not sure. But some of the holdings here that weren't listed in the SEC were AdLife, Alibaba, Carvana, this company Grenke, Prosus, which is basically an investment in Tencent as far as I'm concerned, this Ryman Healthcare, and then we see the Salesforce.com and Wix.com investments here rounding out the bottom. It gives you some idea of the conviction that he has in those companies. I would still say it's very concentrated, especially for somebody running other people's money, but it's just interesting to note. So I hope that was helpful. I think I'm really going to be paying attention to Vinall. Just like last year, I really got up to speed on Pat Dorsey's investment philosophy. I think Rob Vinall is somebody who I'm going to go back and hopefully read all of his letters this year. I think there's a bunch of great insights we can take away. He seems like a really good investor to clone, especially for those of us who are learning about how to value these companies where it's not necessarily evidence in the books, in the numbers, where the value is coming from. It requires a little bit more of a differentiated way of thinking. And of course, another reason that I'm going to be following him is he has positions in Alibaba and Facebook, Prosus, Wix, Salesforce, all these companies that I'm quite interested in learning more about. So very interesting portfolio. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this portfolio, about his investment style. Did he get lucky in this latest bull market run-up? I don't think so. But let me know what you think. He's got pretty amazing returns as far as comparing it to his benchmark. So I'm very pleased that this guy exists. Overall, I'm super impressed, excited to read more of his letters and continue to follow his portfolio updates. To sum it all up, I think Vinall is clone-worthy because he invests in long-term compounders. He has differentiated views. He runs a concentrated portfolio, and he holds these companies for a long time. So if you're looking for a growth at a reasonable price investor, Vinall is going to be one of the men for you. So definitely go to RV Capital and sign up to receive his letters and check out the fact sheet. If at the very least you'll learn something about a company that potentially you haven't studied before. So I think it's worth everybody's time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this one all the way to the end. I really appreciate your time. I hope you learned something about Rob Vinall and can add another great investor to your cloning list. If you liked this video, please like the video and subscribe for more. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks.